In 1971, Holden dropped a bomb on the Australian automotive landscape. The HQ Monaro debuted in 1971, and with it came something fierce, something bold, something that would define a generation. It was an all-new design that was both larger and more luxurious than its forebears, mirroring a similar trend in U.S. muscle car design from the late 1960s and into the 1970s. But this wasn't just another muscle car. The name Monaro is of Aboriginal origin, meaning a high plateau or high plain, a fitting title for a machine destined to reach the summit of Australian performance culture. But the story begins earlier. The HQ series of the Monaro began development in April 1968, with design leadership transitioning from John Schinella to Leo Pruneau in June 1969. The design, finalized in mid-1969 for a July 1971 release, showcased a blend of American and homegrown Australian styling influences, marked by a forward-reaching front and flowing rear lines. This wasn't some corporate rebadging job. This was authentic Australian engineering meeting American muscle car ideology, and the result was something genuinely unique. The HQ series of the Monaro began development in April 1968, with design leadership transitioning from John Schinella to Leo Pruneau in June 1969. This is a 100% Australian-developed car. When Holden unleashed the GTS variant, they removed all pretense of civility. The HQ version of the Monaro GTS eliminated all six-cylinder engine options, offering a 4.15-liter or a 5.0-liter V8, both locally manufactured, or a 5.7-liter Chevrolet V8 for the top-level GTS 350. The message was clear. This was no family hauler masquerading as a sports car. This was V8 or nothing. What made the HQ extraordinary wasn't just what was under the hood. The HQ was the first full-sized Holden to ditch leaf springs at the rear, making the move to coils all-round with trailing links to locate the live rear axle. It was technically advanced. The HQ was the first Aussie-made car to feature full flow-through ventilation. Holden had thought deeply about what made a proper muscle car, and they'd built something that could stand toe-to-toe with American icons. But this was the dawn of the muscle car's twilight. The HQ was something of a last gasp for the muscle car status the Monaro had attained. The HQ's bold striping spoke to an aggressive nature that was all too short-lived. Even as it rolled off the production line, the cultural moment it represented was already beginning to fade. The era when the Monaro captured the national imagination was brief, but burning. The Holden Monaro revolutionized Australian performance cars. First released in 1968, this two-door coupe combined American muscle car aesthetics with Australian engineering prowess. The Monaro GTS 327 dominated the Bathurst racing scene, cementing its status as a performance icon. The Monaro GTS became more than a muscle car. It was a cultural phenomenon representing a way of life. Australians identified the Monaro with freedom, adventure, and self-expression across the states. Fast, stylish, and unapologetically bold. With features like bonnet scoops, it became a national icon, celebrated in racing and among collectors of vintage vehicles, much like the Pontiac GTO. Initially only available as a two-door Monaro, the GTS badge was extended to the four-door Monaro from 1973. This was a risk. Holden created the bold, contrasting paintouts in order that the new Monaro GTS sedan would not be mistaken for the humble Kingswood sedan upon which it was based. Those iconic hood and boot-lid stripes weren't decoration. They were declarations of independence, visual shouts that said this wasn't a family car wearing a performance costume. By 1974, the HJ arrived with a subtle facelift and fresher styling. The handsome bull-nosed HJ series came to market in 1974, adding optional front and rear spoilers for the time. Holden's 4.2 and 5.0-liter V8s continued in GTS, sedan, and coupe, with the US-sourced 350, 5.7-liter, dropped from the range. The writing was on the wall. As the decade progressed, Holden would de-emphasize performance, eliminate the availability of a manual transmission, and, eventually, discontinue the 350. The final chapter came with the HX and HZ. Only 2079 HX GTS Monaros were sold before the HZ farewelled the all-Aussie Kingswood platform with the GTS model that featured no Monaro badges. No badges. The ultimate indignity. By 1979, production of the two-door coupe ended, and the first generation of true Australian muscle cars was extinct. What happened next is the real story, the one that took decades to unfold. Treated as cheap used cars for decades, original Monaros are now rare, sought after, and hugely valuable. While values have never reached the crazy million-dollar heights of Ford's Phase 3 GTHO original GTS 327 and GTS 350 HKs, and HTs are often still worth over $250,000. Those cars that were thrashed by teenagers, left to rust in paddocks, driven into the ground by enthusiasts who had no idea what they'd inherit, those cars are now treasures. A factory 350 HQ GTS Monaro is very valuable today, with a 350 sedan fetching as much as $50,000 and close to $100,000 for a 350 GTS coupe. But money tells only part of the story. The ongoing interest from vintage car collectors and brand enthusiasts indicates that the Monaro will remain a relevant symbol of power and style for years to come. In 2001, decades after the original run ended, Holden dared to revive the Monaro badge. It would remain once of the most loved Australian-built cars for decades after it left production, finally being brought back by Holden in 2001 as the third-generation V2 model. This new Monaro would enjoy more success than any of its forebears. It was picked up and sold in the UK as the Vauxhall Monaro, and in the United States by Pontiac as the new Pontiac GTO. The legend was global now, but the original, the HQ, the HJ, the HX, those remain incomparable. The lasting legacy of the Holden Monaro GTS cannot be overstated. It symbolizes an era of ingenuity and Australian craftsmanship that deeply resonates with old and new car enthusiasts and has found a following in markets like the Middle East. The Holden Monaro GTS isn't just a classic car, it's a piece of Australian history that encapsulates a nation's spirit, ingenuity, and ambition, a true win for automotive history. The Monaro meant something. It still means something. In a world drowning in corporate homogeneity, where cars are designed by committees and built to quarterly profit margins, the Monaro stands as a monument to a moment when national pride, engineering ambition, and pure automotive passion could align. It was fast, it was beautiful, it was unapologetically Australian, yet unmistakably part of a global language of muscle. If you've got passion for machines that meant something, that built nations and defined eras, you know where you need to be. Subscribe now, and let's dig deeper into the cars that changed everything. Next week, we're exploring the dark heart of Australian muscle, the Ford Falcon that shattered records and reshaped what was possible. Don't miss it.